Welcome, magical ones, to an alchemical life where our mission is to liberate humanity from limitation and suffering and bring magic back to the world. One moment, one life, one heartbeat at a time. What I find so particularly unique and truly beautiful about your relationship is that you're so committed to telling each other the truth, no matter what the truth is.
I've seen the way I've been manipulative, but very unconsciously. Like I've seen the way that I've tried to like steer other men from getting too close to her, like just by my energy. And I'm still being the happy me, but I'm like subtly getting a little close and like,
you know what's going on inside.
It was like grocery shopping wasn't as fun anymore. Where desires came in and maybe they were expressed in a way that where I received it, where I all of a sudden felt just not wanted or completely replaceable. And it had been such a long journey of so much love and adoration, and that wasn't his intent, and that wasn't even his truth necessarily.
And that process has happened enough times where there's simultaneously a depth to it happening, and simultaneously sometimes, like she said earlier, it's like, is this just trauma? Am I just like re-subjugated myself to the same self-abuse?
Oh, I love that. That was the first 5 seconds. Hello, everybody. Welcome to An Alchemical Life. This is where we believe that everything the universe brings us is a gift to help us evolve and ascend frequencies so we embody our most authentic divine selves, the creator I am within. And so here today, I am with two of the most amazing beings that I know on the planet. We have Blank B, who is an amazing musician and just light of the world. Literally, I remember meeting you at Ecstatic Dance and just being like, who is this guy? Like, he just emanates, you truly do, you emanate the most radical amount of love and joy just from your being. And so you're such a gift to the world. And then we have Kara Allison, who is just one of my dearest friends in the entire world. I can't even describe how much I love you. I also met you at dance. And you're just to me, you're a plant wizard. Have really introduced me to the alchemy and the healing that can come through that whole entire kingdom. Not to mention that you're just one of the most authentic, aware, loving, potent people that I've ever met. So I'm so honored to be here with both of you. And so
can I introduce you?
Yeah, if you want to.
Because
it's the first episode, huh?
Yeah.
It's true.
Welcome to Kira. Kira is, we could not have wanted anybody more to be sitting here with us today, because you are just one of the most intuitive, open-hearted, curious, loving, sweet little beams of light on the planet, who has your whole own enormous story that has just like, I think the title of this is about alchemy. You are just like, you will be seen as what you are, which is just the greatest alchemist of life. Like a literal diamond built out of pressure. And I just love how you see both of us, and I love seeing you. And I could not feel safer and more excited to be received by you.
My gosh. Okay. Thank you. That just went right in. Wow. Okay. So where do I go from there? All right. So the title of this podcast, I'll start there, is Dying to the Fire of Truth. And what we're here to really unpack and talk about is what I see as the intense, beautiful, profound, transformative alchemy that you both have cultivated in your relationship over the span of years. And you're at a particular point now where you like wanted to share the story and how far you've come and where you're going and all of that. And I just wanted to clue people into the fact that this is truly a story worth listening to, because I've witnessed you consistently choose love and consistently choose transformation over and over and over and over and over again. And relationships are our greatest teachers, and they're the greatest container for alchemy. And so there's literally not a person on the planet that you can't help with your story, because it will apply to everything. So with that, I'm going to pass it to y'all and just let you kind of tell us where you are and just start wherever you want to.
Yeah. I wanted to share, that dying to the fire of truth, where that comes from essentially is, I think we all know what it feels like to leave a chapter of our lives, to feel like something's evolving, and you're blossoming into something new, and it's like it can feel like death. Kara and I have done that probably in my vague sort of like guess, maybe like 10 times, throughout the course of
Yes.
our relationship, where probably more. But like I said, more
More.
significant.
Yeah,
And when I
yeah.
say times, I mean like I'm talking about significant, because there's
Yeah.
little deaths and there's big deaths, and today I think we're here to talk about a big death, because we've done this thing where I think for love to exist in a relationship, there needs to be total truth and totality, and just like I accept you as you are, I accept you as you are, nothing needs to change, and so anyway. I think relationships can test us all, and for us, we've not been any different. The only thing that's sort of that I think might be different with us is that we've had some pretty extreme experiences that of relating to each other, where I've seen us be like the happiest two people, like it's like that I rarely see in the world, in the way that we like have fun with each other, even years into our relationship, like being out in the world, and just a couple months ago, I remember we were on a hike, and somebody at the top was like, "Oh, new couple," because we've sustained this element of newness, and the way that we've done that ultimately is yielding to the inevitable moments of death, where everything is on the line. And in the last 2 months, it's been a whirlwind of ups and downs, where we live together, and yet we are also in the process of transitioning away from each other, even though we're sitting here so lovingly holding each other's hands, and like and just like having as much fun as we do sometimes, now, that as we did in the beginning, and like just the way we dance around the house, or we're like, I don't know. I feel that our love is so palpable and special, and many people who would be around us even today might be kind of confused at the idea of like, wait, what? You guys are transitioning out of that? Like, what do you mean? We're moving apart. She lives with me, and she's actually moving away. And we just want to talk about that, kind of unpack um, why we would be doing that if we could have these moments of just like such purity and innocence and love and fun still,
Yeah.
and truth still, like, yeah, because we've it took us a while to kind of even come to this point, and you know to recognize that that's the right thing to do, and yet still love each other so much, and still, I mean, we're still lovers from time to time. We don't have necessarily an idea of what we are, sometimes too, like as we're transitioning away, what it's going to evolve into, we don't
Yeah.
know. But we want to talk about it because I think in the journey we've learned so many things, and so many, like, essentially everything we've learned has arisen, in my personal opinion, from the idea of sort of like dying into the fire of truth, because sometimes there's conflicting interests, um and like sometimes I've had experiences arise in me that I don't want to tell her because I don't want to hurt her, or vice versa. She might not want to tell me something because she wants to hold things together. We're both trying to hold things together, but as long as we're trying to do that, then we're like holding truth back, because it's easier to be not truthful. uh Truth can feel like total fire, like we're just burning in it, and yet on the other side of that is we find our total liberation. So even as we've been transitioning, it's been very challenging, emotionally. Old stories still pop up, and we still have total challenges with it. And yet I think it's so fascinating. Like, the reason why I wanted to actually do this podcast is because it happens over and over again, where I like say something to her, I think this is it, we're done. And for sure this time I'm ready to accept that I'm just going to be alone, at least like she's not gonna want to talk to me, and maybe that still could happen. I don't know. Like, life is surprising, but I've been surprised many times, because after I've spoken my truth, that it feels so scary to say, I don't have this expectation. She hates me for a little bit, or gets really upset, and I've hated her in the past. Like, we have these fiery emotions where it's like, what? And then on the other side of that, there's this total love, and a softness, and an acknowledgement that both exists there. That the love is just as, it's the fire of love, which is the other side of the coin of the fire of what can feel like bleh. And like, woo, we really, I don't know any. It's clear to me now more than ever that there's no way else to do it. I mean, if you can't accept what is, including the little uncomfortable thing, it's going to grow into a big thing. And then if you don't accept that big thing, it's going to grow into a massive thing. And life's just a series of those. And
Yeah. I have a question
yeah,
that I think might help people establish the framework of your relationship.
thank you.
Because you've mentioned how committed you are to truth, but I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about what that actually looks like in your relationship. Because I remember one of the first things Kara ever told me about your relationship is, I've never met anybody else so committed to, excuse me, so committed to truth as I am. I know that there's this extraordinary level of communication and honesty with even the inner world that happens within your relationship. And I'd just love for you to talk a little bit more about that, to kind of set the stage for how you've gotten to this point.
Yeah. Can I start?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
I want to answer that. And then also, it was sort of already what was on my mind. So I'll just kind of speak on it in the way that was coming through, which is,
Yeah.
in terms of the title that we chose, which was Dying into the Fire of Truth, the journey that B was just referencing is, on this path that we have been on, that has not been the vision that we've had in our minds the entire time. Truth has been, but dying into the fire of truth has not been. The really deep, what I feel like is almost this, for myself, great initiation that's occurring inside of myself. And I feel like anytime that something's occurring in me, it's occurring in him in our own unique ways, is really leaning into exposing honestly and vulnerably what the death process has felt like, and will feel like potentially, or has felt like for us before the rebirth, and not even waiting for the rebirth, but like really leaning into this fire that can feel like you are burning alive, literally. It can feel like that. And the fire is this great purification. And it really depends on what lens you're looking through. And like B said at the beginning, when you are in that death portal, when you're really, really in it, often you don't get to know that the purification process is happening. You're just, because part of it is living in the illusion of great suffering that is like moving through us, that we have to learn how to love. And so I feel that our path, which I would love to speak on how I even met B and what I asked for before I met B, that I realized years later, but this path of truth has been here the whole time, with a lot of different visions along the path of being happy for no reason, choosing your reality, being your own creator, all these things that are these huge, beautiful, transformative experiences. And yet death keeps happening in the process of rebirth. And this feels like we have been, and I feel even are kind of, in the middle of right now. We're in it right now, in like embracing this enormous death, and the fires of purification, whatever that means, or liberation. And yeah, does that at least start with some of what?
Yeah. Well, and I think I was looking too for maybe if you could share sort of what, well, I'll just share and you can maybe, you like feedback to me. What I find so particularly unique and truly beautiful about your relationship is that you're so committed to telling each other the truth, no matter what the truth is. And when B said that earlier about like total truth and total acceptance, you've had to have these situations where, and I don't know if you want to speak into like what that dynamic actually looks like, but you've had these situations where this truth and this truth, wow, there's a big difference. Or this truth is very hurtful to the other person, but you're both so committed to being open and honest and vulnerable. And I think that's why it's been possible for you to experience such profound transformation and liberation in your relationship, because of that commitment to like not sweeping anything under the rug and not hiding anything from each other. And it's a level of dedication that I literally have never seen in another relationship in my life.
Yeah, thank you. I want to comment on it by saying, I think you said this a little bit, but when Kara and I met, we were both very much floating in the unattached land of just loving everybody, not attached to where we're going to end up in life. We're just here now, and here now is wonderful. It's here now here. It's here now here. I mean, it's wonderful in all the versions
You were
of
walking Buddhas.
walking Buddhas.
I felt that way.
Yeah, and so we met each other. I actually call her my god mate, because the people talk about soulmate, like, are you going to meet your soulmate? And I say no, because there's an aspect of my self knowingness when I met her that was like, I know that I'm speaking to myself. I know that you're me. I know that I'm everybody around the world is me, because it's all me, because not be this body, but like the me behind that's witnessing this moment right now.
100%.
Which is God. And she knew that for herself. And so we met each other kind of knowing that we're just these little, mirrors for each other, and there's no attachment. It's just fun, free, and let's love each other. And we loved each other so very deeply, so immediately. And, there's nothing to obstruct that, because we already knew it in ourselves very strongly.
Mm-hmm.
And so we spent so much time, like day after day after day, just like blissfully in love, just having fun,
You were
exploring
in the bubble.
together. What's that?
You were in the bubble.
Yeah, in the bubble. And the bubble lasted quite a while, like months and months and months, like, well, maybe like, yeah, 6 or 7 months. And we spent almost all that time like with each other. I mean, because we also both have had the ability to, we've had like more free time at that point. And so, yeah, we got to really, really go deep. And somewhere along the way, this is the fascinating thing that I always think, no matter how enlightened a Buddha is, if he meets another Buddha, I always think that, like, hey, you're not attached to anything for all eternity. Me too. Like, man, this is cool. I didn't know
What happens if we attach?
and then it becomes so fun, because that's what happened with us. And I'm not to say that we're full Buddha level enlightened, whatever. That is,
I said it.
It's all relative, right? But I will say that, because it was a version of some of the most fun things that we've ever had, and mind you, the freedom aspect of it, the non-attached, I don't need you to show up tomorrow, maybe I won't see you tomorrow, that aspect of it is what really was sort of fueling the honeymoon aspect of it, that we were also living with ourselves prior.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the way in that journey, because it's so deep and so fun, and the bond gets and it's like it's everything, because that's a great experience. I don't know if you ever spent time with somebody where there's no attachment, no expectation, but you're just like in love, and you're just like, I really see you, and wow, this is beautiful. But like,
and also maybe like goodbye forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so somewhere along the way, the attachment did set in, of course, and we unconsciously started to assign the other person our source of that place within ourselves that is connected to the divine, to assign the other person our source of love, essentially, and kind of get lost into the illusion of, if I lose this person now, I'm going to be terrified and heartbroken, and so I can't lose them. I need to hold on to her, because if I don't have her, then I'm scared, and so when I was saying earlier that we had this experience like 9 or 10 times, what I was referring to is like coming to this point where the truth might be in conflict, action might be there for somebody else. It might be
a pinnacle point also, just to, when we say absolute freedom, it's like a non-monogamous, zero kind of organized. We're just being in a state of love together with zero expectations of anything, including lovers, life choices, everything. So that's
Yeah.
where it was born of.
Yeah, so it was born of there and then but out of our own like kind of like exploration of like what would it be like to be with somebody who's that much there and is beautiful and is like likes the same things that I like, and I want to know. I've never known before. So
Yeah.
it's like we both kind of yielded to the illusion, consciously or unconsciously, I don't know. But and then somewhere along the way, truths have gotten repressed and pushed down in
Hmm.
some moments, and or little, like I've seen the way that I've been like a I've seen the way I've been manipulative, but very unconsciously. Like I've seen the way that I've tried to like steer other men from getting too close to her, like just by my energy. And I'm still being the happy me, but I'm like subtly getting a little close and like
You know what's
it's
going on
still
inside.
subtle. It's so subtle, but I've like I've blocked people from connecting with her and vice versa.
Mhm.
And but those yes.
Yeah, well, I just felt excited about that because that's what I feel like one of the main things that we feel excited about talking about is, for two people who have been so honest and both we should and could give some examples of the degree of honesty that we're talking about, that even, it's like the deeper that one can go into a state of some sort of evolution, like being so deeply honest,
Mhm.
somewhere in our unconscious minds, we trust ourselves very, very deeply, so much so that we still have blind spots. And the mind is so cunning. It is so cunning that every time we break through and we're like, whoa, I thought I was being honest, but now there's this thing. And actually, I was not being honest with myself. So then you think you've had the breakthrough, and you have, and the mind goes deeper with you, and
Yeah.
it finds a new place to cling and control and protect, survive in whatever ways it thinks that it needs to. And so I just felt like you were touching on that. And that feels like one of the biggest parts is kind of dying into the fire of truth, because it's just like a constant purification. And that's like you were saying about alchemy to us earlier outside of this, if you want to touch on that, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, and just to reference what I did say about alchemy, alchemy is a purification process in and of itself. Like the ancient alchemists, to make lead into gold, they constantly burned it in the fires of refinement. Oh, I mean, it took years to take one sample of lead and turn it into gold,
Wow, I never heard about this. Cool.
Yeah. So and the whole point of it, you come to find out, was really, it was about the process of the alchemist himself. Like what happens in you as you're trying to take this from this to this, and you fail and you fail and you fail and you fail, and you're having to constantly do the same process over and over and over again. That's really what alchemy is about, is the process that happens on the inside of you as you're trying to come up with the gold or create the gold. And I've just witnessed you both like fully choose that. And I also, I just have to take a tiny second here to say, you just did it, B, where you were like, I've been manipulative, and it's like you're totally calling yourself on something that most people would hide and not be willing to say out loud,
Yeah.
um, and that's stupendous,
Yeah.
um, I think, Kara, you said like maybe it would be good to give a couple of examples if you feel comfortable. If there's anything specific you want to, just to give people an idea of, because what I really feel with you guys is you are, in a way, even though it's been really painful, I know, I do feel like you're like trailblazing a new way of relating
I feel
in
that
this.
too.
Yeah, yeah. And so I'd love for you to like just give us some examples that would be teaching examples of like how you meet each other in these moments when the truth and the attachment and the feelings and it all just gets mixed up into this soup.
Would you like to give that?
Sure. Nothing comes to mind from right now. um, well, you.
I mean, my mind goes straight to like the kind of seemingly craziest ones probably to people. but I'm like, do we wade our way
Why
in
don't we
there?
just? I don't know.
Naturally
I'm
arrive.
comfortable with just sharing anything because maybe there's stuff that blossoms out of it. I don't know. It's up to you.
Okay, yeah, I think I would like to share, and I would like to start with just before and how I met B, and then how me asking for that truth became challenging, and then how that transitioned. So,
I love that.
thank you. Thanks for the question.
Yeah.
So, yeah, before I met B, I think I was single maybe for like 3 years or something, and it was wonderful, and I loved it a lot. And um, in that, I don't think it was on purpose, but I had come out of some relationships where no matter how genuine one's desire was to be in a truthful relationship, it just seemed that people, the individuals that I was interacting with, were not honest enough with themselves yet to
Mm.
tell the truth, because you can't unless you know inside of yourself. And so through that, some pain was, cultivated that I allowed and went through a process with. And I remember in my fit of emotion before those 3 years of being alone that I was like, I am so happy alone. Like, I don't need a lover. I've never needed a lover. They just keep happening. I don't want to be with anybody unless they are completely transparent, like more honest than I am. And I can't even imagine that. So I'm probably going to be alone forever. And maybe I'll have some lovers. And that was genuinely my feeling. And then I spent 3 years pretty much alone, kind of with Ram Dass in my ears all day, and just in love with existence. I mean, maybe I met a couple interests in there, but I was pretty much alone.
Mm-hmm.
And not looking for anything or anyone. I met B. And I think when we met, we both had reasons that we were like, well, this will be interesting, but it's definitely not going to last. I think we both had our own independent things, from statements that each other had made that were like, yeah, that's probably not really going to be a long term thing, which was great because we weren't looking for a long term
Yeah.
thing. And as we spent time together, I mean, this was just truly, genuinely, we were just having the most transparent, at the time, radiantly joyful experiences I'd ever had. And one of the first truths that he told me that I found very endearing and beautiful was, I remember that I was sharing with him at one point something about children. And I even tried to kind of like, I was like, I haven't like thought about having children with you. I didn't want him to like feel uncomfortable. And he said, well, I've thought about having children with you before. And I think we were maybe like a month in or so. And
Wow.
I was so shocked by that. And then we just ended up having this it didn't mean he wanted to have children. It just means he's thought about it. And then we ended up having this really beautiful, deep conversation. And I remember thinking, wow, that was not a truth that I was totally willing to recognize in myself, that I didn't even
Mm.
realize that I was hiding a little bit for a moment. But this person just came right out with it. So those kinds of things were like where I felt like it was like, it blossomed. And it was like more truth and more love and more expansion. But it was all of these truths that were totally real that currently were surrounding us in this bubble of just such deep adoration for each other. And with time, as it will, some of those truths start to come out about, well, I'm actually, I'm really attracted to this other person, or, which was expected. There could be a little bit of a moment or a sensation or a feeling, but that was like where we were at on the
Yeah,
journey.
it was totally expected because again, we started with no attachment, no like definition or confined idea about what we were. Like
Right.
we wanted to be lovers who were
I even
open to having.
had another lover when
Yeah,
we started dating. Thought he did.
Mm.
Yeah. So
I sometimes think I do too, and then I don't.
I think it was a prospect. I think that he had, so an interest.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and so, then it would start with those experiences, which after so much time of so much of the truth being you, I love you, I love this, I love us, I
Right.
love, then something trickles in. It's like, oh yeah, okay, we're still free, we're still doing things. And that didn't feel so wild. But over the years, over time, things arise where one might tell the truth that they have a preference to be with somebody else right now, or I mean, you
That
said
was
you're open.
me.
All of these are probably going to be about him because he really is. In terms of the really hard truths, please feel free to call me in because I can't think of the hard truths that I've given you so much, except for maybe at the very, very beginning about the lover that I did have.
And the end, like lately, she told me, I hate you. And
Yeah.
I was like, I felt this was
Hard
music to
truth.
my ears. I felt it was music to my ears in a way, because although there's a
Um,
part of me that feels like hurt, I'm like, she's being so honest. And it's like, actually, that I'm turned on now. I'm just kidding.
He's not kidding.
I'm
not kidding.
not turned on in that moment,
Yeah, but
but
just
usually
by honesty.
but usually
Yeah.
it leads to me actually being turned on, quite frankly, because if there's some honesty coming out, like I'm having the experience of like also mourning and grieving, and even the fact that she's in pain while she's saying I hate you. That's why obviously there's a part of her that knows that. There's part of, like, I know it. There's just pain, and I wish that pain wasn't there, so I'm hurting as well.
Mhm.
Um, but while that's happening, I'm kind of just observing the fact that this is true, and and every time that something like that's happened, where from her end, where it felt like she was cutting everything off from me, it feels scary. It feel like, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe this is how it all ends. And in a way, I'm accepting it fully, and I'm just grieving right then and there. And yeah, I would say those are some of the most potent things in your transformation that I've seen, is your ability and your readiness to just like lay it out on me, because I think
Yeah,
she,
which is kind of newish.
yeah, because Kara's kind of lived a life where she's, I think, been very a nice person to a lot of people. She's
Yeah.
been like, hold it together. She's very, look how lovely she is. She's so like calm and relaxed, and
Um,
spiritual, and elegant.
we call that a recovering people pleaser.
Yeah. And so, and in some ways I mirror that. Like I've been more angry after this relationship, like and to the and ferocious. I've lost my like whole body control. One time no, three times I slammed like the pillars or something, because I felt like I lost control. I was like, wow, I'm more spiritually elevated, whatever, blah blah blah, than I've ever been. I'm more conscious than I've ever been. I'm more open hearted and loving than I've ever been. But also, I'm the most angry I've ever been.
Yeah.
And so that's another version of truth that I've seen from both of us,
Yeah.
where I mean, that's kind of, and like even coming up very very recently, where it's like really learning to hold all the truths, because once you have the truth, you got nothing to do other than to hold it. You can't push it away. You can try, but it's just there.
More painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Away.
so
Eat you alive from the inside.
Yeah.
yeah, so I've
Yeah.
shared there's one of the, certainly a predominant pattern, and I don't even, I feel scared to even talk about it sometimes right now, because I feel like there's a story that I'm just guilty, or I'm like, because I'm the guy or I'm the being who's had like more interest external from our relationship more
Mhm.
often, certainly. And the reason why I feel nervous to say that is because I don't mean to color this situation, because sometimes she'll feel like the victim, she'll feel like the one who is, um I don't know, just like, we can cut this out if you'd like, but sometimes you've looked at me and said, like, I just feel pathetic, like that I'm even still here with you. Like, why am I putting myself through this when you're not loving me the way that I know I deserve to be loved, or something of
Yeah.
this nature? And I just, I see that we're both inhabiting these roles, like, and that neither one's better or worse in
Yeah.
a way. I mean, this conversation could go really really deep. It's like, not everybody might understand this because it's kind of new to me, but like in some regard or another, we're just working out our own karma, or we're like, because we have past inherited stories and sort of pain, or like attachment points that have met each other, but we're very much having our own experience of this attachment. For me, it's like I've had this story for most of my life that I've not been attractive to girls, and I've not been successful with girls, and all of a sudden I have had this shift in my life a couple years ago, where I'm like the most attractive, the most like, I have these relationships that I never really experienced before. So sometimes like I crave it and I long for it, because I'm like, I'm supposed to be free and I want to explore this, but now I'm in this dynamic with this being where I say that I've like exploited her at some point to like, Oh, gosh, there's a lot to unpack here. Basically, when
Yeah.
we started, it was unattached. Somewhere along the way, I remember having a moment where I felt I was lonely one night and sad. And usually, when I have emotions, I deal with them myself because they're my responsibility, and I don't want to like try to fix things
Connect
that
from
are
that
external.
place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was kind of happening a couple times, and I remember thinking like, if she wants to come over and hang out with me, and I want her to come over, and I'm feeling sad, like, so what? Why don't I just like try it? Like, I just want it, and let me just go down that path. And in a way, I feel I don't regret it at all, but like in a way, I feel the dynamic shifted that day for me because I was almost affirming to myself that I was like, I was giving her the sort of reins of my ability to totally love and center. And from then on out, I retained the identity and the concept of myself being a free individual who's independent and centered and wants his freedom totally. I retained the idea, but it became an egoic idea where it was no longer lived truth. It was the mask. It was like an imposter, like a beautiful mask of blank B, the guy who's free and happy for no reason and just like living each moment like a new, joyous thing. But secretly, unconsciously, I'm holding on to her hand and making sure that she's by my side and using my little tricks of unconscious, like I said, manipulation earlier,
Yeah.
where I'm keeping her around, and even though there's tons of love throughout all of it, there's also little things of little tidbits of fear, just little pieces,
Mhm.
but they
Yeah.
started to grow and start to spew and come through the cracks, and the truth always finds its way through the cracks, and so all this to say that where was I going with this? I actually don't.
I if I may, I'll jump
Yeah,
in
yeah,
because you were
yeah,
headed somewhere really beautiful. Um, First of all, I have to again acknowledge your bravery and your honesty for everything you just said. Like, holy shit, you definitely found someone at least as committed to truth as you, Kara, for sure.
More.
Um, and I also want to say, like, because you very vulnerably just shared like how you could be characterized, right? And because you're the one bringing in the external lovers or like external attractions, we'll say. Um, and I just want to say for the record that I don't see you that way. And I know Kara doesn't, even though there's probably moments where she does, but because that's her truth sometimes, right? Like that's the anger and um, but I love what you spoke to about karma because like I too like semi recently, have been delving into that topic and more recently have come to see that it is literally just attachment. Like we can get into like how we're getting it from our grandmothers and our ancestors and we carry the whole history of all of humanity in our DNA, you know. So like we actually have access to all of it. And there's just the unique composition of every individual and how they form their own attachments and what becomes important to the ego and
yeah,
what defines the ego. And so you two have just beautifully had opposite ego attachments.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. And I just want to say that for the record, like you're not a douchebag.
Yeah, yeah, and
Mhm.
I have a song that's called that goes, it's obvious that you love me, yeah, but you just don't know it yet.
Yes.
And if you listen to the lyrics, like I actually turned her off initially and turned a couple other girls off, and very understandably so, because it's like, what do you mean?
Don't tell me I'm
Don't
in
tell me
love
I'm
with
in
you.
love with you, because and I get it
No
like
woman
that.
likes to be told that.
Yeah, it can sound like a totally arrogant thing, but actually, I give her free the difference, because everything in life is this way, where it's like there's it's all in the approach to whatever you're saying, whatever you're doing. And I held that perspective because I recognize everybody as me, and I recognize myself as everybody, like literally, like there's no
So of
separation.
course they love you.
And because I love myself and I love them, and
Yes.
and if they're having some like thing that they're going through, or like, and they're living in the illusion of that there's no love, but I know there's love because I'm them. And once they find out that I'm actually them, then of course you're gonna love themselves, because why, who, that's all there is. Like I've already, trust me. So anyway,
Which is also why you've attracted more women in the last couple of years, because that vibe
yeah.
is very attractive.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And And so, but so the lyrics could look very arrogant, but it's just a subtle distinction of the distinction being, I don't need somebody. I don't need to force myself. I don't need somebody to agree with the way I see the world.
Yeah.
I don't need somebody uh, to validate me, to like for me to feel happy. I'm happy because I know I'm creating my own truth in my life as well. I know that I'm the writer, and so I can like and that I'm seeing life in this unified way, and so that there's just love and so anyway, yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
so
Go ahead.
Kara, I'd love to. I feel that you have something on your heart. Maybe I'm wrong.
I got a lot of
Um,
things on this heart.
say what?
I said I got a lot of things on this heart, but yes,
Okay.
there's no rush.
Maybe a good intro, because I'd love to hear like the other side. So we've kind of like explored what B brought into the relationship and like his form of attachment, right? And so I'd love to just explore a little bit like what that was like from the other side, because you guys are so perfectly doing the yin and yang thing, um, and maybe even specifically speak to, if it feels natural and organic, to the people pleaser thing and like what the journey you've had to get to. Maybe you want to use a different term besides people pleaser, but the journey that it's taken to get to be able to look at him and say, I hate you. Like
Yeah.
something that you could never have conceptualized coming out of your mouth. Because one of the things you said to me, and then I'm going to shut up. One of the things you said to me yesterday that I thought was so powerful, B, was about seeing yourselves in these moments where you're behaving completely opposite to everything you know to be your truth. And yet you're having to see these parts of yourself and love and accept them, and what that journey is like. So it just feels like anywhere you want to go in there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, when I entered with B, like he mentioned, sort of from this God place,
Mm-hmm.
I felt 100% mutual. And in our interests, in our exploration of existence in general, in every possible way that we could imagine, I was totally on board. A series of events occurred where probably the depths of me didn't even know. And B has pointed this out to me many times, like, if you don't mind me sharing, I had a lover when we met, and um, I was enjoying myself and spending so much time with B that was my current desire, but we had time apart that just happened to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my first time ever then sort of having two lovers at the same time. And I went and spent the evening with that individual, and it really awakened some things in B. And I could feel it, part of this journey that we're talking about, part of our truth, part of it is our willingness, but part of it is totally involuntary, because we are so incredibly sensitive to each other beyond a level of sensitivity that I've ever experienced, that unless we're not near each other and not texting or calling, we're going to know that something moved out of the alignment of total bliss and freedom.
Mm.
And so I could feel in his text messages, even though he was, not saying anything that was challenged yet, I could feel that something was off. And eventually we ended up speaking about it. If you need to jump in, you can. But, and, I remember feeling in that immediate moment like, well, I'm obsessed with you. So I don't need to go anywhere. I just thought that's what we're doing. And I didn't feel bad about it still consciously. I remember feeling very sovereign and very like holding him in his internal process, just from far away. And I still didn't feel like I was giving anything up. But maybe after another conversation or some things transpired, he's reflected to me that I probably closed that part of myself a little bit.
Yeah.
And as he expanded into those places, certain certain things, and this is, I guess, the importance of the dialogue, is like certain things that would feel like they were coming out in the name of freedom, in the name of love, sometimes we didn't recognize were coming out in the name of fear, disguising itself as freedom and love, or seeking freedom and love.
Right.
And so in these truthful expressions, when they come from a place of fear, it was so unusual for us. We had been so at the peak of just total trust, ease, like blissful euphoria on just alternate planes of existence for so long that
At Sprouts.
at Sprouts.
Which is a grocery store. If you don't know about it, it's a wonderful grocery store. But the point being is that, like, it's not just
Anywhere.
it's not just in the bedroom. It's not just with the flowers on top of the mountaintop. No, we're talking about everywhere. Which,
in an alleyway, in Sprouts, in the in the produce aisle, whatever. Like just so much bliss. One of my favorite photos, like our first photo, is from Sprouts camera for security. So
we joked about getting married there if we ever were to do a marriage, because we thought that like man, we just have as much fun here as like anywhere else. Like,
you know?
So anyway,
amazing.
a fun little detail.
So, as things occurred where it was like grocery shopping wasn't as fun anymore, where desires came in and maybe they were expressed in a way that where I received it, where I all of a sudden felt just not wanted or completely replaceable. And it had been such a long journey of so much love and adoration. And that wasn't his intent. And that wasn't even his truth necessarily. But the truth that he shared evoked that feeling in me. That a number of those scenarios began to cultivate almost immediately just a totally different relationship with myself and with him, where I did not feel special anymore. And I had a really hard time acknowledging and allowing that to be true in myself, because I was meeting life from a perspective of not needing to be anything special at all, not needing to be anyone to anything, not being bound by anything, and, basically accepting death. I mean, that's like one of my favorite topics. It has been in life for a long time, and just like being nobody. I mean, if you know Ram Dass, there's a lot of what was coming through me. So it took me, there was a lot of deep internal arguments with myself, unconsciously and then consciously, of realizing what was trying to come through is, Kara, you want to be special. You want to feel special to this person. Even if you don't believe in that, even if that is not your higher self's vision of your ultimate outcome of existence before you die or in multiple lifetimes, right now, the feelings that are producing in your being are saying, I don't feel special and I feel afraid of that. And it's all that I desire. And I was just unwilling to even acknowledge my desires. And so as a people pleaser, along with a few other things in there, I was being honest only from, and I mean, this is up until, it's changed, but like there's been a recent huge transformation just in the past like week or two. Really only being honest about my wholeness when I was witnessing that wholeness from the perspective of my high self. And I would point at my high self's desires. And those I am finding are just different than whatever ingrained patterns happen to live in here that do have real feelings, real emotions. It doesn't mean that the stories that I'm attaching to them are true, but the feelings are true. And I did not know how to separate those things, and I did not know how to love those things. I really thought I did. I mean, I think lots of people thought I did. And I am realizing now I'm not even close, because now I'm doing it and I'm like, wow, well, doing that actually ends up with me saying, I actually hate you right now. And I know that like my whole self doesn't mean that, but that is what I'm feeling. And when I actually let myself feel those feelings, when I let myself feel things that I never thought would come through me, that I wouldn't accept to exist in me, hatred, blame, shame, judgment, spite, like maybe even a tiny, tiny bit of thoughtful revenge in there or something in times. When I actually let myself sit and feel all those things, I realized that immediately as I break through the stories about the other person, I end up feeling all of those things for myself, because I have been stuffing them, which has carried me on the journey of continuing to make these choices of not expressing myself before it became feelings that are that big. And yet it feels totally perfect that we have been so obsessively in love, that we have had so many beautiful moments that are incomprehensible to me, that have kept us in this dance of getting into the fire and then having the liberation and being like, okay, it's not trauma, it's a breakthrough. We're evolving. There's evolution. I think there's a difference. I feel it. But then eventually being like, no, this is trauma. Like, my body's getting sick. My whole being's getting sick. But it all brought me to this pinnacle moment right now in my life that really is embracing the fire and embracing death and not really worrying about the rebirth part, not trying to jump ahead and be like, I'm reborn, and just being like, I'm actually on fire.
Yeah.
And when I am honest with the human emotions, it feels like I am burning alive. And when I sit with those and I love them and I accept them and I allow it to not be something wrong with me, when I recognize this is the human experience, these emotions are not wrong. Nothing that can happen could possibly be wrong because it is born, it's happening. So how could it be wrong inherently? Then when I move into the state of love with those things, and it's wild to feel genuine hatred and blame and anger and love and acceptance at the same time. When I really feel all of those things, then it's like the fire can go somewhere else. It moves and it turns into deep inspiration and liberation and love. And, I was mentioning forgiveness when I was in a tea ceremony the other day. And then I was like, I don't even just want forgiveness. I want to alchemize this. I don't just want to forgive this person who maybe didn't even do something wrong either, but like maybe my being feels that forgiveness is needed. I want to completely integrate, transmute, and like see the entire perfection of what this is and the entire perfection of this being and this being. And and that somehow paradoxically includes hatred.
Yeah.
Of course it does. What you just spoke to, like as someone receiving what you just said, it's such a perfect real life example of the involution of consciousness into the human form. And you guys kind of experienced that because you were in this bliss state. You were in this place of non-attachment and knowing that you are God. And then you chose to come down into a very human experience of attachment.
Yeah.
And that's actually so perfect because the whole point of this existence isn't to avoid the human experience. The point of this existence is to be in the muck of it and remember who you are.
Yeah.
And so from coming from this, place of like total enlightenment to being in the middle of it and feeling all of these things that you thought you would never feel, that is perfect.
Yeah.
Like it could not be more perfect because you're conscious enough to hold it and to love it. And I think one of the misconceptions in the spiritual community sometimes, as much as we talk about shadow work, is that we're somehow going to be able to avoid facing these parts of us that are not so likable.
Mm-hmm.
And what I see from just as someone who is observing the two of you is like when you'll message me and be like, I was just in a rage. There's a part of me that is like so fucking proud of you because I know how hard it is to let yourself go there. I mean, I'm sitting here, I can think of like 2 or 3 times in my life where I've ever lost it. And there's a part of me that wishes that I did more often. So you're accessing a level of freedom that I'm sitting over here going like,
Hey, you still got time. Don't worry.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's coming.
In the center. I mean, for me, being alone is like, whew, I could be enlightened when I'm alone,
Yeah.
but partnership really, it really brings me to these thresholds that part of me is literally one day screaming to myself, like, why am I here? Why did I how could this be right? Nothing about this feels right. This moment is so painful,
Yeah.
and then it transmutes and being like, oh, in the ease of anything else, I, for whatever reason, chose that I had to go into that level of depth of suffering or pain or whatever in order to see where I'm still caught.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I wish that it could be on a lighter level, but those just aren't clearly as present anymore. So they're
Yeah.
really deep levels of being caught, and it's a big undertaking.
Yeah. I would like
Yeah.
to share a little bit on my side as well, and to relate to what you're saying. There was a day where I was writing on my journal, my stream of consciousness. I hate you. I hate myself. I hate this. I hate who I am. Like, fuck this life. I'm just like the darkest things I've ever written. And this was about a year ago or so.
Mm.
And the reason why I was hating myself so much in retrospect, and I've never hated myself that much before. By the way, and so not everybody knows me that's probably listening to this. Maybe you do. I don't know. Maybe that's why you're listening to me, because you know me, or you know us. I don't know. But for those who don't, like like Kira said in the beginning, like I've really been reflected, and I know, I know that I'm like one of the happiest people that I've ever met. and and have been, and and I made this whole album about like musical album about like happy for no reason, and I had this identity curated about being the dream master. All the lyrics I wrote in that album, it all was really born from a place of just like a true knowingness in me, and it was all to do with the identity, even my name, Blank B, the identity of a blank canvas, just
Yeah.
choosing my way of being. And so I've had all these identity structures that I've lived the truth of. When I met Kara, I was living the truth of, I felt. But the ego's cunning. And so at some point, I'm still trying to hold on to this structure, but I'm actually not living each moment totally newly. I'm trying to, but I'm stringing her along, and like in a sense, and like I said, that day when I was lonely and I decided, why don't we just hang out? So I'm kind of using her to like make me feel better subconsciously, and then I don't see it that way, like there on
Of course not. Yeah.
after. But that was a big shift. I mean, uh because now I still have this identity where I'm the guy who's able to just be so present that the past doesn't exist, and I can be in the moment. And guess what? There's a beautiful new woman in the moment, and there's nothing wrong with being an open dynamic and lovership, as we both entered as consciously as we could to being that way. It's just that the energetic integrity was a little off from me, because like I said, was sort of no longer living the truth of the identity that I created around no identity. I actually around being like the self-fulfilling, self-loving, total beingness. But because I had the identity there egoically, and in my story, I would sometimes act out of integrity, and I would feel that there would be problems that would come up. I wouldn't be fully, and I say energetic integrity because actually I never thought about this before, but I think it's a brilliant way to look at it, because it's like, maybe because I can convince myself a million and one ways the way that I am in integrity. Like, my ego is very special at doing it and really knows how to like defend myself.
Mm.
But if I'm speaking about energetic integrity, it's like, if there's a feeling coming up, like, and I'm getting upset that she's upset about what I can't do, my upsetness has nothing to do with her. In being full integrity and living the truth of my being, who claims to be sovereign and whatnot. Sovereignty doesn't mean I need to fight my way and defend my way and to claim it. I'm just scared and hiding the fact, and um and so also manipulating the situation very subtly, even to myself. That's where I go from truth to the illusion of even my own idea of what I think is being truthful, because it's an energetic thing, and I've given up my power. And so the way that it blossomed for me in the reverse way a lot would be like, I would have these sexual interests or desires, and and they would become very perverted, because I started to like the way that the dynamic was shifting, because we both were probably living some version of out of integrity with our truth.
Yeah.
um and also not even able to see it ourselves. It would blossom in such a way that there would be these little baby misalignment crashes that we would feel, where it's like, it's just a little thing, but it's kind of annoying. And then it would happen again, and then those little things started to become not so little. They just would get big and bigger. And over the time, like, the way it's played out for me was that, like, I started to really shame and guilt my desires, my interests, my sexual attraction or something. I would really, really like And that's what led me to arriving at a point where I would hate myself, because there's a part of my egoic mind that's like, but I'm the guy that's supposed to live every moment new, so of course I should be able to and just act and talk to this beautiful creature in front of me. And yes, I have a partner, but we're supposed to be open and blah blah blah, and blaming her and getting upset about the whole situation, but feeling righteous in it. At the
Right.
same time, I hate how much pain I'm seeing arise in her, because I love her, and I hate how much conflict there is, and so it transformed to me just really at that point hating myself and hating all the fact that this was bubbling up, because I would try to turn it down. I would try not to think about the thing that I shouldn't be thinking about, that's causing her pain. And then the more I try to do that, the more it would find its way through the cracks, and it would pervert my mind. And when I say pervert my mind, I just mean like it would show up,
Like a loop. You can't get rid of it.
yeah, or like it would show up in all the ways that I that were the scariest. And
Yeah.
sometimes like it would literally just be like, the very thing I'm not supposed to think about, or the very conversation that is the most taboo would come up the most, because there's a part of my being that knows the innocence and the purity of the truth of my desires or my interests, but it's so colored in non-truth, because I've been asleep at the wheel for a little bit,
Mm,
and have conflicting things happening, because the other part of my attachment has become her, and I always denied that one. I always said, it's that's the only reason why I would ever blame her, because if I wanted to do something and it didn't feel right for her, but it really felt right for me, and claiming my own responsibility, I could just do it, and
be able
maybe
to hold
and
that.
say, well, her emotions are her experience, and yeah, it's gonna, if it's hard for her, then that's what we agreed to, that's what we talked about coming into it, that yes, I need my sovereignty, and I would have handled it that way if I was mature enough, but actually it was all so cunningly under the surface of like a very beautiful, glamorous image of an egoic ideal of what it is to be totally free,
Yeah.
because that's what I love. I love total freedom. And yeah, so dying to the fire of truth would be like having to speak these truths, because that's what would happen. They would bubble up, and I'd be like, no, not now, not this, no, come on, like this was supposed to be that one thing that was supposed to work, but here it is, like, no. But I'm like, I can't hold it back, because she could feel it anyway, like,
Can
and
you like share? Can I
yeah,
just like give a list, because I just feel like it'll be. I just feel like, so just so people can know what's possible.
Yeah.
Like
And before you start that, I just want to pin. Let's come back to the concept of freedom that you just opened up after
yeah.
you do your list.
okay,
Truths in the least opportune moments that were born of, yeah, this feeling of not being allowed to have a certain feeling, not being allowed to have a certain thought, such as
Mm.
um, envisioning another woman when we are like finally having, the most beautiful, deep, intimate lovership that maybe we haven't had in a while. And
yeah,
so there's multiple things building up of like, oh, like we haven't done that in this way in a long time, so it's really exciting, and in that excitement it's like, oh, better not fuck it up, and in that better not, here
yeah.
comes the thought, and maybe the thought would have passed before, and it would have just passed, and he would have just come back to what's in front of him. But
Yeah.
because all of this fear had been built up of, and now it's not just the thought of another woman that passes by and then, oh yeah, I'm back here with Kara and myself, but now it's, oh no, I'm doing something wrong. And I mean, it only takes a second of feeling like you did something wrong in the middle of intimacy for it to not be connected, and we're
Yeah.
so sensitive that I'm kind of like, what happens? And
And in fact, I think she was really enjoying herself in that moment, and but then I wasn't, and so
there's
there's
more than one time, but yeah.
yeah, there's one that I can think of. It's like,
Yeah.
it's because that's, and it's like we had this conversation. If anything comes up like that during like love making or something, like, please, let's stop, because I do
Yeah.
not want to live in a. I do not. That's not love. Then at that point, there's something else happening, and let's talk about it. But to me, you know, my ego and my desires is that we're finally good, and In
I am
fact,
not going to fuck this up right now.
yeah. And go ahead.
Well, I also just want to express, I don't think just for anyone listening, there's nothing wrong with fantasizing about somebody else while you're in love. Just for me, my preference in our dialogue is that it's agreed upon, that everyone's okay with it. And in that, so we had had a specific agreement, and then when that agreement comes in, yeah, it's like, oh, I don't want to stop, but I don't want to, it's just, it's so but that's the deep devotion to truth, is like sometimes not even during intimacy, just in life, he would have a thought or a consideration that felt, even just for a moment, that could be passing, that just felt dishonest to him,
Mm.
and it would become so big that when he would come to share it with me, because he felt like he had to, he was like, well, this was dishonest, and this is, you know it would feel so big to me. It took me many, many times of that to realize, oh, this thing might actually not be that big to me if it didn't feel so big to him. But the energy of it is that he feels that something terribly wrong has happened. And it's understandable, because we had had previous experiences of pain in different
Yeah,
scenarios.
cause like the one moment, like even just one moment of being in a such a deep loving, the most high intimacy, and then feeling like I'm having the literal opposite scenario, like the worst case scenario arising at the same time, um, is like, it's terrifying for me. All these moments of speaking truth, the reason why it's dying to the fire of truth is because like I'm risking that this relationship might be over. To be
Yeah.
totally honest, it's like,
Which by this point felt like the end of the world. Like,
of
because you were in a
course.
different place than when you came together.
Yes, yes, yes. At this
Yeah.
point, it's like, I mean, this is like, yeah, after the first attachment, and then letting go, and then maybe it's gonna be over. We actually come back together, and it deepens and it strengthens in a way, and there's like a new territory that we're playing in, and then over time we get to this point again, and it's like, some truth needs to come out, and it could cost the whole relationship. Blah, blah, blah. And then lo and behold, we're going again, and back in love, and it's deeper, and it's changed, or it's alchemized again. And that process has happened, yeah, enough times where there's simultaneously a depth to it happening, and simultaneously sometimes, like she said earlier, it's like, is this just trauma? Am I just like re-subjugating myself to the same self-abuse,
Yeah.
by deciding to be in this thing that's not serving me? It's not always so clear. I would just fend and say that it's not always so clear. Some people externally looked at my situation, our situation, and said, "You guys, that's not. Do
It's
not. What are you
Not
dysfunctional.
doing?"
okay, man.
But the truth of the matter is that through each truth expressed, it wasn't the same us anymore.
Yeah.
The moment that truth comes out, you evolve. You literally are. I mean, you're just
Yeah.
you're new.
I want to pin that really, like, really
Yeah.
super highlight that, because it speaks to a couple of things. One, only you know what's happening in the context of your relationship. And it's so easy. And I just want to say this for like anybody who's in a relationship who's getting outside advice, right? Um, because only you know what's happening in the context of your relationship. Only you know what's happening in your being.
Yeah.
And there is such a fine line when you're going through a growth process. I just went through one myself where it was a totally different kind of relationship dynamic, but very much a relationship dynamic. And I kept choosing into it over and over and over again until it became, okay, now this is no longer helpful. Like, now my freedom is to step out of it, but only I could make that choice,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Well, it was.
And yeah, go ahead.
Well, there was about a year where I felt like I can't talk to anyone about this because it's so deep. There's so much pain arising. So much has happened that can feel kind of redundant to other people, that I thought it won't be understood.
Yeah.
Um,
Same.
but then I thought, well, what am I afraid of? Do I really believe, like, is this the right thing? And it was not for lack of us being present with ourselves. We tune into
You're two of the
ourselves
most
so
present beings
often.
I've ever met.
And I would tune into my heart after all of this deep wounds, deep pain, deep, like, why am I here? Obviously there's a million reasons I'm here. I still love being here. Sometimes I'm still like, why am I leaving?
Yeah.
But I would tune into my heart, and the answer would just be like, yep, this is where you're meant to be. And for now. And the fact that we came to the decision to part ways in a moment where not like everything had been perfect every day. I mean, something had even occurred in that week, but on a day where nothing was particularly wrong, it was just a feeling. And I just was anxious, and he just asked me about it, and I just started crying, and he just asked if we shouldn't live together anymore. And we both said, yeah. And it was just a deep inner heart knowing that we questioned afterwards, but ultimately would come back to the place of, yeah, no, this is the right thing now.
Which
And
by the way, I don't know if it was made clear earlier, but like we made that day, that decision was 2 months ago on Christmas, or
just
just
before
before,
Yeah,
just
I
Christmas.
before.
was just going to mention that because I think that's
And
super important for people to recognize. You've stayed in the container of the relationship for 2 months.
mhm,
Yeah.
By the time you actually move out, it'll even be longer than that. And
yeah,
you've so consciously, maybe this is a good place to kind of transition to like what that process has been, because you so consciously, from what appears to me to be this like untangling, but
Yeah.
that's not even maybe the best word. You're just, I would love for you to speak about that, because
you
the
know what's really
separation process
you know what's
is
really fascinating about it is that like we really what I was telling her is like it's almost as if we're getting to experience each other's funeral a little bit, like the funeral of each
Mhm.
other, because like and I almost mean that in a literal way, because we've had this experience where like we really hold each other and we just mourn and cry and cry. It's like most people, you don't get the chance to say goodbye when they die, because they just like, oh, they're dead now. Some, maybe there's a leading up to it, but like I just thought in a way we're just like consciously choosing to die to each other, and because there's a part of us that knows we could continue, like anything could continue, but there's just for whatever reason, intuitive subtle rightness in the, well, let's, why do we have to be afraid to be apart? Because are we afraid of that? That's kind of what did it for me, is like I think I maybe I'm only staying because I'm afraid, I'm terrified, actually. I know I'm terrified, and I want to go into the terror a little bit because I want to know myself in my aloneness without being lonely. I want to face and hold that self. Um, and anyway, so yeah, these last 2 months, there's been lots of grieving. Looking around the house, just like any probably relational grief, where it's like, oh, this garden that we curated together is so beautiful. I sit out there and then I'll just like, you know, I'm there. I'm like dying because like she's not going to be doing it with me anymore, and so that's terrible. It's just terrible grief, and then in all the little facets, and it's just. But through the grief, it's also been a very like also alchemical, spiritual experience, because grief has really taught me in these last 2 months and reminded me that because of the unbearable nature of it sometimes,
Mhm.
um, the only sort of thing that I can do to reassure me of what is even happening, or to recognize what is even happening, is to remember the aspect of myself who is witnessing it, who is not the experience itself, to not
awareness.
identify with it, to not attach with the grief, let it be, and just and see it. And so there's been lots of experiences where I've had deep grieving moments, and it's like an invitation and an opening into that aspect of me, which is beyond the mind, beyond the body, beyond that the witness, the one who's just able to notice that there's a grieving moment happening, and aches in the body and the heart and stuff happening. Like the one that's witnessing it isn't it, and that is me as well, just as much as the one. And so to remember that aspect of me, I mean, is literally coming full circle back to the where we met each other. It's the God self. It's the self that is recognizes its connection to everything, and recognizes the perfection in everything, including grief, including all the emotions, the sometimes the bubbling up emotions and stories that have arisen in these past 2 months, have also like we're learning to hold all of them with loving compassion, like whether it's grief, anger, frustration, annoyance, or whatever the things have been. It's still happening as if
Yeah.
it's like a normal relationship.
It's almost
um
happening more than it did before we decided.
yeah.
Some of that anger and the stuff
For
that's coming
sure,
up, I don't think I was, it just didn't, it wouldn't come out of me before.
Yeah, because also like truth is being squeezed out a little more
Yeah.
too. Because like the very
yeah.
fact that we're separating is like, well, what does that mean now? Does that mean, for me, it's like, do I allow do I go out and socialize with the world? Am I gonna wait for my sort of freedom because again, I want to be in I'm wanting to step into a life of timelessness where there's like no idea about waiting. I'm just here now. I got a little lost in that one actually.
Well, I want to highlight part of what you just said, just for because it was like a really beautiful teaching moment
uh,
just now. Um, that maybe not everybody has had the experience of, and so I just kind of like I want to like just quickly break down what you just said about feeling the grief and simultaneously knowing that you're simply the one witnessing the grief being felt, and so you've got this distance. You've detached from the grief, and yet you're allowing yourself actively to feel it. That is the sweet spot.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
um, to me, because I've experienced grief both ways, and I'm sure both of you have as well, where it's like you're so in it and there's a huge story and you're the victim, or somebody else is the perpetrator. Maybe you wouldn't even call yourself the victim, but the attachment to it is so strong, and allowing yourself to feel that kind of grief isn't helpful. I mean, it sometimes has to happen in order to get to the place where you're not attached to it.
yeah,
And when you're able to, and I just recently had again just had like a total death portal where it was not the extent of y'all's, but 4 or 5 days of just wow, there was nothing but grief. And it was one of the first times, at least for me, in that length of time where I was able to remain detached and just to allow
yeah,
it to go through and recognize this is simply energy. This is simply karma. This is simply the release of something from my body, from my mind, from my spirit that has to go. My soul is literally like kicking it out, because it's part of that purification process. You have to feel it to purify the lead to gold. And I just wanted to highlight that because I don't know that that's, we talk about death. Oh, I'm going through a death portal, and it kind of gets glamorized, but it's not easy to just sit in that and literally surrender to, all right, I am going to be the awareness that sits here and feels this, no matter how tough it is and no matter how long it lasts, but I'm not going to identify with it.
yeah. And what you said is really spot on too. Like there are some periods or beings or moments in life where you're very much invested in the attachment, in the identification with the experience or the emotion. But truly, I do think life is an inevitable gift. Like you think that you're going through the worst thing, and you are, but it's been a gift for me to go through such depths, because like I said, it's the unbearable nature of it that I can't avoid, even if I tried that. And so if I'm looking for an answer, that's what I would just even forward to anybody's that I talk to about anything, is like, it's just, it's a game of identity, like life. It's like we are the one unified thing. There's no separation between us. Not everybody understands what that means. I don't, we go through phases of understanding what it means or whatever, but like ultimately when we identify with the situation that we're experiencing, I say identify because we think that we can't see outside of it, because it is just it is what
You're in
we
it.
are, and we're in it. But I like even if you're not like a, I don't know, spiritual person or whatever, it's like you could, the very aspect of just witnessing your experience and noticing that, paying attention closely to the one who is witnessing, not the experience itself, not what is being witnessed, but the one who is witnessing, which you can really sit and like observe and like, who is that one witnessing? What do they look like? Is there a shape? Is it a who? Where is it?
Yeah.
And kind of like inquiring with this aspect of your awareness. It is the sort of like the safe haven of the eternal beings that all of us are, where even though there's passing show and there's life and death happening and there's happiness and sadness happening in front of the screen,
It's
it's
all
like
a
back
movie.
here, it's just none of it is, it's just clouds passing through the sky.
Yeah.
It's
So
your actual freedom.
it's your
Yeah.
actual freedom. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so that freedom can be found in hatred. It can be found in agony. It can be found in total suffering and death. and it can be found in love, and it can be found in joy. And it's really paradoxical to even say that, because it's like, what do you mean? Freedom can be found in non-freedom. Freedom can be found in prison. It's like,
Well,
but to
freedom
fully,
is just essentially not identifying with the ego.
yeah,
That's really what freedom is. And so
yeah,
you can do that anywhere in
yeah.
any situation.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. The true truth is that you already are free. We're all free. We're choosing this suffering. We're choosing these experiences of like deep aches. And again, not everybody's, I think, ready to understand that. And it's okay. You don't need to understand it. But what is important to understand, I think, is and what everybody can understand is the very simple nature that like whatever's happening will pass. And
Yeah.
it's not getting attached to it, but like embracing it, and finding a space to just like hold it, like even when there's hatred. Like that's why I said I was so like proud and happy for her when she was hating me, because she was like, because I was like, wow, yeah, this is great. I mean, this is like,
This is new. This is fascinating.
if you can hold this, I mean, you're reckoning with some truth. You're really expanding your
Wow.
capacity to
Yeah.
love. So when that thing comes up in her, it's her relationship with herself.
Yeah.
So she's less consumed and afraid to even like touch it and like, oh, hold it together because I don't want to go there because that place is.
Yeah.
And then you find out that if you even let that pass, then then life just goes on, and you don't hold yourself in this rigid format of like trying to hold together what you think you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you for all of that. That this experience of expressing the anger, feeling blame, feeling these things, I don't know, someone could be witnessing this and feeling like, no, that's not the way, and I get it, because there are a lot of ways to go. But what it really is, the purpose of that is, for now, the devotion to what is true. And there are many truths. The truth is, we are not our emotions. The truth is, I'm having emotions, and in my judgment, my critic of that hatred is unlovable. Now, I don't usually feel that way around other people. I
Right.
mean, I'm more loving unconditionally, probably, to people that sometimes I say something to my mother and she's like, well, do you love Hitler? And I'm like, in the grand scheme of my soul, yes, I do. I don't love his actions, but I love his soul, which is eternal, which is just the essence of, and whatever journey brought a being to do something that could create so much pain. Yes, I do. I do
Yeah.
have that love in me. And yet somehow, if I even had a feeling of anger or blame or any of those things, it was so deeply ingrained in me that it was so unlovable in myself that it just caught it so fast that it would just erase it. It would just turn it into something else. So I was definitely not consciously shoving these things
Yeah,
down.
yeah,
And that is, dying into the fire of truth. We're not talking about dying into the fire of love. We're talking about dying into the fire of truth. And in that, it requires complete unconditional love as a whole being.
yeah,
There's wholeness is wholeness.
yeah,
It's not wholeness as much as you want it. It's not wholeness in the light but not the dark. It's just all of it.
yeah,
It's all of you. And it's not you as in who you are, but it's all of this human experience that is
of
willing
us.
to express through us.
Yeah.
And so I was really grateful. I have been the few times that I've had some sort of like what I would have felt are these explosions where I was like, I would get really embarrassed after. I would feel really ashamed for a moment of like, whoa, I can't believe I just let that out of me. And he would kind of be over there, like he maybe might be crying, but he also might be like, wow, that was like, I'm like really into this. He's like, I'm so proud of you for feeling your emotions. And sometimes that would even make me mad. I'd be like, no, I'm just trying to be angry at you. You don't celebrate me. But that is so nurturing. It is so beautiful. I mean, really, like the most honest people. And I also, have been and am realizing where I have been not. If I cannot unconditionally love my truth, I cannot be honest.
Yeah. Well,
Because
and
honesty is just beyond, it's just all of it.
yeah, I was just going to say, going back to the Hitler example, like if we are all one and you have that love for him, but you don't have it for yourself, right? If you can hold him in his massive, amounts of, we don't even know how to label what happened there.
Yeah.
but you can't hold you saying something unkind or hurtful to another human being, then there is a block to the love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so of course your soul and your consciousness and the universe is going to bring you into the situations in your life, and this is for everyone, where that love gets to become whole.
Yeah.
But that means you're going to be challenged with the things that you don't want to hold.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Those very things are going to be
Yeah.
brought to your doorstep because that's what you need to learn to unconditionally love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what Hitler wasn't loving about himself. That's why Hitler became Hitler, is because he
Talk
uh,
about an ego.
yeah, just
Yeah.
through the generations. And that's why that's the part of you that can have compassion for him, because it's like, oh, I see the little Hitler in myself growing, because it's like because as much as when I try to push these things down, if you don't sit with it, if you don't acknowledge it, if you don't acknowledge it, if you don't, and if you identify with it,
If you're not truthful about it,
yeah, if you're not
back to the
truthful about
truth.
it just grows and grows and grows and grows and grows.
You'll
And
start to point outside of yourself, which his was an enormous
Yeah.
version of that. But
yeah, I mean, and that's the fascinating thing about our relationship. I remember seeing myself blame you and being like, wow, I'm totally blaming you. And I feel like I didn't think I could ever blame anybody, because I became so consciously aware that I am creating my life 100% me, not her, me. And yet here I am saying that she's blaming
That
her
somebody else is
for
doing
my
something to me.
happiness or my imprisonment or lack of freedom, blah blah.
Yeah.
And yet it was happening,
and that's what I saw in myself. And I realized, wow, here I am saying, yes, I do blame you. I do. And my voice needed to say that, even though some part of me knows that I am responsible for my own feelings, because the only way for me to recognize my way outside of blame is to even accept the fact
You
that
have to go down to come out.
yeah, if I won't acknowledge that I'm blaming you, then I can't not blame you. Because
Yeah.
I've disguised it.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
only way out, as you say, is down or through. Yeah, it's just,
And yeah,
you got to
or
go
through.
into it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. The mind, our egos, our fear is very cunning, and our righteousness. We don't see our righteousness as righteousness all the time, but it's more of just like a subtle feeling. In fact, if we saw it, then it probably wouldn't be there, because when you really start to see it, it's like, oh, something else is going on here. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's such a delicate little dance. Like I really just, I don't know, I just keep going back to like seeing the old identity. Like I had so many like song lyrics where I created an identity around, and then I would be recognizing the way that I'm interacting with her is not consistent with this identity that I know is the truest thing I've ever felt in my life.
But I think that's a really beautiful point, is like, even when you construct an identity that is fully based on freedom and love and being present in the moment and all of these Buddha-like qualities, it's still an identity.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's so
Right?
it's paradox, it's like
That's the cleverness of the mind, is
Yeah.
I am free. I am this. And it's like, well, as soon as you say I am,
And put something on the back end.
there's the separation. You've boxed yourself. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
true freedom is allowing yourself to not be free in any given moment.
yeah.
It's a paradox.
It's a paradox, and it is the reason why we're human. It is the reason why there is anything happening other than the eternal white blip nothingness. Oh,
The bliss of the bubble.
yeah. I had a dream where I was there, I was in it, and then I came back to this reality, because it was like it was the most profound dream I've ever had in my life. I came back to this reality and realized, oh, I created all my troubles, all my problems, all of the human race, all of the people I call other, all of the problems, the explosions, the armies, the wars. I've created all of this because I want to experience the dream. Because on at the end of the stairway to infinity, well, there's no end, but like the other side of the consciousness expanding, there's just like nothingness. There's everythingness.
Black hole.
Yeah. And I like that term. We're on a stairway to infinity. Everybody's perfectly in their place, and we're just where we're at. And we've happened to have some kind of unique situations in our relationship that hopefully can like provide some insight into for other people's experiences and their own.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt really excited to share about it because I felt like, for me individually as well, we're both going again through like this transformation all the time, but it feels like a big one right now. That
Totally.
again, I just, from the reflections that we receive from people, from the amount of joy that we still experience together, we went to the holidays with family together, the fires happened, we went on a trip together, we were in the snow together, we've had all of these beautiful experiences merged with all of these grief moments.
Mm.
And all of these deep wounds erupting at the same time. And it just felt like, wow, after all of this journey together and the fact that we're actually parting, and all of it feels in a way in the name of truth, that I want to be fully, both of us have been feeling this, many people around me have been feeling this, I want to express more honestly, because so many people reflect back to us this sort of idolization or adoration, like something that they're seeking, that they desire. And they usually see us in the light of our light. Sometimes they see us in the depths and in our communication, and they're like, whoa. And that also made us want to talk about it, because we're like, oh, this is just how we talk. But I have this deep, part of that fire, all of this repressed stuff coming up that now has somewhere to go, wants to just be so unapologetically authentic, and that it will, I hope, I mean, it's just for me really, but also for whoever is receiving it, that the people that are like, oh, Kara's just the sweetest, she's just so graceful and all that, I'm like, wow, there's a lot happening inside of this being, and I want you to see it, because all of it is possible. And I also want to unwaveringly love myself, and even if nobody likes it, I want to unwaveringly love myself in every facet of my being before I transpire from this body. And nothing could be more important than that to me right now. It's just the way of
Well,
truth.
that is, yeah, wow, that was so beautiful. I was just going to say that is, again, that's the point of where we are as a human species right now. Like, we are literally evolving to higher frequencies. And the way we get there is that unconditional love. Like, it's why we're all learning the lessons of judgment right now. And, it's so easy to look at everything that's happening in the world and just think like, wow, something is so fucking off, And it's it's literally all, you can look at it on the macro scale, and then on the micro scale, like your relationship, also what's happening in the world, like it's these explosions, these fires,
Mm-hmm.
these situations that are causing us to have to transcend judgment.
Yeah.
And as we transcend judgment, then when we unconditionally love ourselves, which means to unconditionally love everything and everyone and every expression that has ever been uttered by any being, then we're free.
Yeah, and that includes our lives as well. Like I've really sat with that so much. The idea of unconditional love has really been like a north star, or like something I like have enjoyed rooting myself in. I remember being out on the beach with her and some friends, and this guy that we ran into who was presumably on drugs and apparently part of like the cartel or something, and
Mm.
he ended up like screaming to us, like screaming in our faces. It's a long story, but uh, that he like kills people, and he wanted
He was
that he
going
chops
the
people's
darkest
bodies
of the
up,
dark. He was really trying to
and it was
evoke
terrifying.
fear. Yeah.
I remember I was really scared. Think like he was pretty much threatening our lives, more or less, like speaking of how easily he murders people. And I believed him, to be honest. I believed what he was saying. I don't know if it was true, but I believed him. Part of me was just
Yeah.
like, I think this guy's telling the truth. I think this guy is the darkest being I've ever met. And all I could think about after getting away from that experience was like, wow, yet again, just as a phenomena happening in my experience, the thing that caused me all this uncenteredness and fear was like my attachment. But this time, my attachment was to my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw how somewhere on this journey, that's perhaps maybe it's the last attachment to go, where it's like maybe I live tomorrow, to live or die, maybe, and because all the other attachments seem to be like subdivisions of that. It's like the greatest fear is the death of the life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's just interesting, but you can't force yourself to be ready for that. It's just, I don't know, it's all kind of just happening. It's like unfolding, and it's like
It's a movie.
sometimes,
You're just watching the movie.
yeah, just watching
Yeah.
the movie at this point.
Things that has gotten me through this process when I am really deep in my stories about us and I don't want to let go and I am just, in fear of rejection in the future or whatever. It really genuinely, the moment that I realize all of this is going to end for me at some point,
Mm.
it's all going to go. That might be terrifying for some people. And when the moment arises for me, I don't expect to feel this centered about it necessarily. I have no expectations for that moment. But I generally come into the stillest moment of peace and just appreciation for what a magical, magical love we have gotten to dance with each other, and that I will continue and he will continue to dance with in every moment, with the plants, with you, with whoever's around us, with our own fears. It's just like, wow, this is wild. What are we doing here as humans? We're all going to die. And it's just like that just makes it feel somehow like, whew, well, this was pretty awesome
Yeah.
so far.
It is the great experiment what we're doing down here,
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, I feel rather than I think to go through a life where you don't feel the depths of it all of the emotions, the bliss, the grief, the pain, the anger, the hatred, the sadness, the joy, the ecstasy, all of it. To me, that's the saddest thing, is if you actually go through life numb. And what I see in both of you is that you really allow yourself to feel and experience the fullness of life, because that is what we're here for, you
Yeah.
know?
It's truly is wonderful. I really love the word wonderful because there's wonder even in hell just as much as there is in heaven. And yeah, I wouldn't want it any other way.
Yeah.
And because the final, perhaps maybe it feels like it's coming to a close, and one of the things I would probably like to lead off or leave off and saying is like dying to the fire of truth. It really does lead on the other side of like the coin of death, obviously, is birth. On the other side of fire being like a terrible, like, hot thing, it's also passionate aliveness. And
Mm.
truth on the other side of the truth of like it's truth of like, and it's this wonderment. Because if you can hold the wonderment for like, an aching moment that's just like intense, like you're able to, that's how you're able to see the world newly, like a child again, like, and really not just like, I'm not like exaggerating, there's no hype, there's no like puffery in what I'm saying. It's just truly, life is incredibly magical, like everywhere. Like, and but we cannot see that if we're not
We're in resistance.
allowing ourselves to be in truth, and to face truth. Because truth is in truth, life is insecure. There's no, I the only thing that is certain is that things are changing. And it's like, it's reckoning with that, and it's holding that from a vantage point of security, which is again the identity, the polarization of, there's phenomena that's happening, that's changing life, death, and rebirth, and then there's the secure part, which is beyond all of it, which is just witnessing it. And so yeah, it is fun.
Well, I'd also like to say, that as beautiful as this share is and as loving as we are, I said to B the other day, is like, we're not out of the woods yet. This almost, in a way, this conversation almost feels, it's not the beginning, but in a way it feels like the beginning of something new to even express this in the ways that we are. I
Mhm.
mean, I go from feeling this level of love, adoration, security, excitement about when we're on the same page, talking about this experience of purification, to being alone and feeling totally anxious and terrified. And all of my fears that I've clung to while we've been together probably will come back even when we're apart. There's going to be so much coming through. And, our devotion is just to loving ourselves unconditionally through it, no matter what that looks like. And I just want to like really note that, because the point is not to be even this, what's the word,
Grounded, loving, present.
yeah, easily expressive, in this place of like it can seem quite wondrous of like, wow, that looks like it feels really good, because right now we feel really good about talking about it.
And
But
I want
like,
to add that maybe it stays this way.
maybe it stays this way. Maybe it does. And
Maybe the movie ends happily.
and that has always been what I've loved so much about him since I've met him and jumped on that train of, yes, actually, let's open our eyes to the potential of not the worst case scenario, but the most beautiful scenario. And yet, in my fire purification truth process, I am really wanting to expressively recognize that I am in the throes of it.
Yeah.
And I intend to be wide open to that. I feel pretty sure that I'm still going to feel on fire sometime soon. And in that I'm going to feel profoundly inspired as well. And I just like really, really, really want, I mean, I think that's the message that's going to be coming through me for a while to existence. So
Yeah.
Well, what feels so powerful about what you both said is, I mean, everything you said was powerful, but what feels so powerful about what you just said, both of you together, is the impermanence that you're really highlighting. Like, there are the experiences that feel like you're being burned alive, and then there are the experiences that feel like the passion of the fire of passion, and that dance between the two, and how open you are to all of it. And how I loved what you just said, Kara, of being devoted to, that you are both devoted to fully loving yourselves in this process. And as you do that, that creates freedom, not only for you, but it also, because we are all connected, that ripples out.
Yeah.
You know, that freedom consciousness ripples out, and it affects people around you. It affects people you'll never even talk to.
Yeah.
Because we're all in the same field.
Yeah.
And so I just want to like really, really celebrate you. First of all, for, dang it, the way that you live. Like, just such a beautiful, yes, I know there's like so much mess, and we've absolutely covered the fact that it is not all holy, what you might label as holy. And what I witness in both of you is this commitment to truth, this devotion to the fullest expression of the divinity that is within you, coming through you at every possible moment, whether that expression is grief and sadness or hatred or bliss or love. Like, you're both so committed to really wringing everything you can out of life in terms of evolution and growth. And yeah, it's stunning to watch. And so I just want to celebrate both of you and say thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable and sharing in this way. I really do feel that, you know, for people going through anything similar, really any kind of relationship dynamic, it doesn't even have to be a romantic partnership, but anywhere where you've potentially attached your identity and your belonging and your security on another person. And that can happen in many different facets. This is such a beautiful example of what it means to go down into that dream and then to come back up out of it and wake up and come out of the dream.
Yeah.
So I love you both so much.
I love you.
I love you so much. And I think it's I mean, you know, that you're able to, that you even have the appreciations that you do for us really speaks to your own heart and your own capacity to really live in truth as well, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I really want to express, Kira has been pretty much my main go-to source of, I could tell this being literally anything that exists inside of me, and it will be reflected to me with the most love, and not love in the way of I'm validating your fears or your desires or what you want to hear, just totally pure love and wisdom. And I mean, I honestly don't really know what I would be doing without you on this journey. I've been doing it, I feel alone for a long time, and you have been just a best friend in this process, so thank you.
It's my absolute honor. You are a best friend for me too. Oh, I love you both so much.
We love you.
Look at how cute they are. We could literally just
cried. I was kind of hoping that one of us would have a little breakdown.
no crying here. All right. Love you all, everybody.
Love you.